Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea, and more importantly, welcome to another exciting edition of Shark Week here at Movies and Tea. I'm your host, as always, Elwood Jones, and joining me, of course, is my co-host, Miss Kim and Elwood.
Hello.
On tonight's show, we look at The Reef, an Australian shark movie, in which a group of people find themselves in a life or death situation when their yacht capsizes. But we will find out what happens to them over the course of this episode as we obviously check the film out. The film itself, The Reef, released in 2010, is directed by Andrew Takaruchi, who's a director best known for directing the likes of Dark Water, and is really a director whose name is really synonymous with the creature feature sort of genre, really, as he not only directed The Reef, he, as I said, he directed Black Water, also known as the crocodile movie, where people spend most of the movie up in the trees. He also contributed to the ABCs of Death, and has also provided a sequel to this film in 2019 with The Reef Stalked. The film itself, though, is based on a true story. We will use that term in the most loosest way possible. It's always the best way when you approach with anyone throws the name, throws based on true events at you, because it's never really actually based on the true events, but more just the idea inspired by true events. But Kim, this was obviously a film that you chose for this week. I mean, you're going into this, I assume, a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen The Reef, I think, 2 or 3 times before rewatching it for this recording. But, I mean, I feel like The Reef has changed over time for me. I always seem to remember the first time I watched it, and just how impressive it was at that time. I mean, I think I watched it the first time was in 2012, right? And between 2012 to now, we've had, I guess, movies. I mean, this time watching it, I feel like the tension is still there, but I'm starting to see that there were other movies that, I guess, came along the way with, I guess, similar things that happen, but maybe have done it a little better. I don't know if it's just me or whatever, but I mean, obviously right now we're getting to slim pickings for our shark movies, so we're looking back at some of these other ones. But I mean, The Reefs is still, I think it's the wilderness kind of concept, right? The horrors of wilderness and isolation, and it's the helplessness of that, of being stuck on the water and in movement in water, right? Which really gives it that suspense. I mean, because if you think about something similar that we've looked at previously was kind of like The Shallows, which has a similar setting to this one, but other than, obviously there's a bit of motion, but there's a lot of, staying in one area and then trying to survive, whereas this group is trying to move to, towards an island that they believe is within X amount of distance type of thing.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, when it comes to The Reef, it's less of a sort of traditional shark movie setup where you have a group of characters being sort of stalked by one or several sharks. In this case, it's more a survival story, as this group sort of find themselves with this sort of life or death situation where their yacht capsizes and they're faced with the choice of either staying on the yacht, where they have the potential of never being rescued and slowly dying of dehydration, or they can make the swim for shore in a journey that will take them through shark-infested waters. And this is the story that the Reef obviously chooses to tell, as this group is slowly whittled down one by one over the course of the film. As we said, this is based on a true story, and the story itself is the story of Ray Boundy, who in 1983 was on a fishing boat that he was travelling along with his friend, Dennis Smurf Murphy, and his girlfriend, Linda. The boat capsized and the trio were tossed into the shark-infested waters near Townsville in Australia. They had surfboards to stay afloat to swim to a nearby reef where they were hoping to be rescued. Now, along the way, Dennis had managed to injure himself in the leg, which attacked a shark, in particular a 15-foot tiger shark that took an interest, and he decided to save his friends by swimming out and luring the shark away, and was unfortunately killed. The shark 2 hours later came back and took Linda, who basically left Bowdy as the only survivor, and he was the only really spared a similar fate as his friends, as he was rescued just in time. So it's a similar story to the one we have here. The story we have here, though, is more just this group of survivors attempting to swim to what they assume is the nearby shore, which, of course, as we all know, in these sort of situations, proves to be a much more difficult swim than they first intend, and certainly one that's made only the more difficult by the arrival of sharks in the nearby waters. So, it's as I said, it's a little bit of a different take. Obviously, having a survival story with this one rather than just the straight up usual hunter and hunted plotline we're kind of used to looking at with these shark movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what really attracted me the first time was, obviously I like shark movies, but I feel that over time there's kind of like this growth of kind of this survival movie and especially kind of like survival horror, but not usually refer to survival horror as in like gaming, but this is like survival horror in the terms of movies. So you're talking about wilderness and the dangers of wilderness. It's a nice angle to take, and I mean, you can really, deep waters is kind of, I think for some people it's a genuine fear, because not only are there sharks, but there are a lot of unknown, right? Once you look to a certain distance into deep water, you don't see what's under anymore, and it doesn't help when you have your 3 other buddies are freaking out in the water and kicking up all bubbles and all this stuff, and then you're trying to find whether you're being followed by some kind of shark or whatever underwater creature. And it's a lot of the unknown, and you can really, I think that the canvas of this is really nice, because you really have this focus on kind of the emptiness of just the area that they're in. There's nothing for distances. It kind of just falls off in the distance, and you have these beautiful water, beautiful skies, and they travel, and then they don't know, they keep having this feeling in this space that something's following them and whatnot, and whether they've made a good decision to do this. And I think in reality the execution of it is pretty good in general for this one. I mean, I think watching this time, I'm starting to really notice that, acting is not really one of the top priorities of shark movies, but this one had some, I don't know, unbearable characters, I guess, but at the same time, I still think the execution is pretty good. They don't overuse music too much. They do have some kind of tropey cues every once in a while to give you that kind of startling jump scare effect. But overall, the survival elements and that sort of thing is pretty simple. And I think with that sort of simplicity of the plot and whatnot, once we get into the waters, and the movie really kicks off with kind of this danger element and this emptiness element and this wilderness type of survival, the movie really picks up.
Yeah, I think you nailed it perfectly right when you obviously talk about the idea of people being taken out of their element, because as a species we tend to think ourselves pretty comfortable with the world around ourselves, and it's really when you put yourself into this sort of area where nature has got more the upper hand, that there's a real sort of tension straight off the bat. I mean, be it out in the mountainous wilderness, or if we're out in like the savannah, or in this case even the ocean. I mean, anything that really removes any sort of advantage that we have, and certainly with, as we see perfectly with this film, with the ocean, it's sort of like it's a big place. And it's very hard to keep track of everything that's happening in the ocean, and you're also dealing with things which have got the home advantage, in particular sharks in this case. And I mean, it's interesting as well, this is an Australian shark movie. There's only been really, 2 shark movies from Australia. There's this, and there's been Bait, which we covered previously.
Didn't they have another similar one? Was it Australian? Open Waters, was it Australian or American?
No,
or
Open Water
English
was a American one. And the director got kind of pissy about it, as basically he cited the fact that sharks and shark attacks are kind of synonymous with Australia, and the fact that it's never been something that has been sort of looked at really. And he goes on to cite that it's like basically one of the most searched for terms in Google for moving Australia is Australia and shark attack. And the fact that you have friends and relatives that come from overseas and they're too scared to enter the ocean because they're bullied they're going to be attacked by a shark. But anytime you go to Australia, you're afraid you're going to get attacked by something, because the country is home to more animals that will maim and kill you than anywhere else in the world. So I think it's nothing wrong with that sort of thinking, really. But, basically he goes on to cite that, the Americans took one of our true stories and turned it into a very successful film called Open Water, which was released in 2003. Really sort of noteworthy for taking that Blair Witch approach of using handheld cameras and telling the story of these 2 divers that are basically stranding out in the open water after their diving boat that they're with leaves them behind. And obviously, the other big inspiration is Jaws in 1975, which, I mean, is essentially where every movie which followed can be sort of traced back to. So, it's he kind of wanted to take something back, really, and to, make an Australian shark movie, especially because this is the place where everyone sort of comes to get the footage for their shark movies, and they thought, well, why are we not sort of getting in on this game? So that's what he obviously did with this film, and he certainly achieved that goal. But we just obviously get into the actual story side of things. I mean, here we've got this group of friends. You've got a brother and sister and the brother's girlfriend, and they're meeting up with his friend Luke, here played by Damien Walsh Howling, who's got all the charisma of a potato, and he's basically set up as this tough action guy who we're all going to be supposedly rooting for. It's kind of interesting, funny as well, the fact that the same actor managed to stand on a stonefish 3 days into shooting, which is probably one of the most stupid things you can do, because they're incredibly poisonous. But that's another thing altogether. But basically he's got a job where he transports sailboats around the country to the different ports that they're due for. And at the same time, he's got this history with Kate, who's his friend Matt's sister. And the 4 of them are going to go off on this boat with their friend Warren, and have this awesome adventure. And of course, it all goes south when the boat mysteriously capsizes, but nobody seemingly knows how, because it's completely flat water. So this boat just magically flips over, and I don't know if you had any sort of insights into how this happened at all, and I would just miss something.
Yeah, well, it seemed like it was some kind of animal attack, so you can assume it was the shark, or that it hit the bottom of the reef or something like that. Because
now you say that, I think they say it was a whale, which is just even more stupid.
No, because they had what they were assuming, because what the camera did was there was something that happened, and then you see the boat kind of scrape kind of like the bottom of something like the water, and then and then it capsizes, and it's all like a big mess in that turn, right? But when they turn the boat over and then they look at it, the side or something, there's kind of like this wood that's kind of pointing out, like the wood on the side is dented type of thing. It's like concaved. It's like caved in. But I mean, I think that their assumption is that something, it's either got hit by something or something hit it, or they hit the bottom or something, a rock or a reef or something like that. I mean, that's the only assumption that you can have. So I guess something with momentum, moving momentum in order to capsize it would be, I guess, the clue. So I would assume maybe they're trying to hint that it's, obviously it's going to be the obvious kind of conclusion would be that maybe the shark did it, right? Because it seems like the shark was kind of, I don't know, suddenly it miraculously shows up in the water, right? But although, I mean, they are in the shark's turf, so it's not really miraculously out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, and prior to this, the group have gone scuba diving at a local reef and managed to destroy the only dinghy that they have with them, so they have no additional way of getting off the boat, so they've destroyed the dinghy, which is basically their backup. They've got a monitor which will get, it's their only form of sort of distress signal, but it needs a plane to fly over it, and Lucas basically says, no, this isn't going to work because they're not in any sort of flight paths, so the only choice that we have is that we're going to go and swim all the way over to this island, and it will take only 3 hours. And if anyone knows anything about when you see land in the distance and swimming, if someone says it's going to take 3 hours, it's going to take a lot longer. And also, he comes up with this amazing plan, not taking into account anything like currents or drift or anything at all. He's just like, yeah, we can see land over there. We can totally swim to that. Let's not stay on this boat where we're perfectly sort of safe and dry, and the boat could drift into a plane lane. No, Lake is like fully gung ho on this idea that they're all going to swim over to this island, and for some reason, his friends are just totally behind him because, I don't know, they're a bunch of schmucks.
Yeah, but I mean, to kind of like stop you there is he does make the judgment that the current at the direction that it's flowing is going to push the capsized boat into the ocean. And if you go to the ocean, no one's going to find you. Pretty much. Like, the chances of someone saving you is much less than if they try to survive and go somewhere, right? I mean, both are kind of, a toss.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know. You just need, it just really depends on your luck. How much do you trust Luke's watch and judgment about where the land is, and then, obviously how far it is, because he's like, it's going to be a few hours, which obviously isn't the case because you couldn't even see it in the distance.
Yeah.
Whereas you have the second option where you stay on the boat, and in the end we realize the boat was nowhere to be found anyway. So what we can assume from one of the scenes that they pan back is that the shark attacked the boat or something, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's sunken somewhere. It got eaten. I don't know what happened. But something happened, and because the camera cuts away from that scene, which I think is one of the smarter executions here, is when they do that go back thing, and then he drops his thing into the water, and then you see kind of this, I think, the shark going towards the boat.
Yeah.
And you kind of, and then it just cuts off. So it kind of leaves the imagination, like, what happens to him. Obviously, the assumption obviously is that he died because at the end they couldn't find him. But I mean, so in reality, if you think about that, the movie kind of gives you that thing that if they stayed on the boat, they would have died anyways. So maybe this was a better way. And now they're in the waters, and it's obviously at this point we realize it's not any better, because while they were swimming and then chatting about random things and, thinking about sex while working out, and having a good laugh and making a lot of noise on the water, they're just going along, and then they realize that there may be something following them and tracking them down, and that's when the whole mechanic of Luke and his little goggles come into play, where he constantly is the person that's looking underwater in all directions to kind of track where the shark is.
Yeah. So yeah, doing a bit of research into this, into what you should do in these situations. Every single person said stay on the damn boat, but because Dracucci has decided that no, this is how we should do it, and I'm right and everyone else is wrong, so we end up having to follow these smucks as they attempt to swim over to this this island. And as you said, Kim, they're making a fair amount of noise, which is, as I said, is all fine and dandy and stuff, because the fact they're in a group means that they shouldn't be attacked, and they should only really been attacked if they were in sort of more spread out in individual numbers. But because that wouldn't make for an even less exciting movie, the group instantly start getting like picked off one by one, and I have to say that for a group that is as unlikable as this one, it's very hard to care that when you lose one of them, it just becomes like a slightly less annoying situation you're faced with. Unfortunately, the most annoying one is left till the last. But then that was in my also personal opinion. I don't know about yourself, Kim. It was like, did you have like a picking order of like who annoyed you most here, or did you actually like these characters?
Well, it's like I said. I mean, watching it again now, I think this time I've really noticed how the characters are. I felt they were annoying. I've always felt, I think, Susie the most annoying.
Okay.
And then, because she would just scream, and I hate people who incessantly scream in like horrible situations, although I'm also a screamer in horrible situations. But I mean, I'm more of like a single shriek type of person, but she's like hyperventilating, right? They're all hyperventilating in this situation, which I guess you can understand because you're not in this situation. Probably in that situation you might have done the same thing. Yeah. It's hard to predict what you haven't experienced. But, I mean, for me, I thought the characters were... I think there was just, it's like I said in the beginning of this, is you don't cast great actors and actresses in these sort of movies a lot because, they're pretty much... I guess, just prey in general, right? I just really, I think in this viewing, the thing that bothered me the most was... The characters felt so empty, right from, they had a good amount of time before they got into the water and into this dangerous situation. And the entire time that they spent kind of bringing these characters together was really set. One thing was that they have this relationship with each other type of thing. Obviously, the brother-sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, the history between Kate and Luke, whatever, right? But none of them really... I guess, have enough of either issues with them or anything to, I guess, enough for you to really kind of care about them before they get into this dangerous situation. And once they get into the situation, they just kind of talk about a lot of nothing. So you're really stuck in the situation where you're looking at these very, I guess, one-dimensional characters. Yet again, I'm still defending the point that, like, most shark movies or creature features, you don't have very fleshed out characters to begin with. So one-dimensional characters usually is the most you get. But, I mean, in this one, I think it's really the point that most of them are, I guess, they're just very irritating to watch. I don't know if... I feel kind of sad because I told you to watch this, and I was like, I really like this. And then I'm watching this, and... This is like, I mean, like I said, my third or fourth time watching this. And it's been a few years since I've watched it. Yeah. And I feel very different about it. Like, I still think there are really great points. But I just realized that before I really liked it was because of the tension. And while the tension is still there, I'm starting to take this experience as a whole and realize that these characters are really irritating. And they actually... stop me from enjoying the tension.
I think the whole situation, because as I said, if like knowing a little about these sort of situations, obviously coming from living in a coastal place, you learn like what you're supposed to do if you capsize and stuff. So to see people so blatantly, stupidly going along with this plan. I mean, time someone says, "Oh, let's swim to the shore," and I'm just thinking that's the most stupid idea possible. It's like without the sharks and everything else, you've got to basically work on the fact that you're going to be battling exhaustion, the water temperature. You're going to be also be battling like elements, tidal patterns. There's like all these other elements. The fact the sharks are just like so way down the list here. And I think the bit which really did me in is the fact that we have this like scene where they're in the water overnight, because apparently, which is fine because sharks have bedtime, and they don't attack people at night, despite it being like the most key time for shark attacks is at night, because it's why they say you don't go swimming in the ocean at night. But regardless, this trio managed to somehow be magically anchored to the spot so they don't drift like miles off course over the course of the night, and they just like still happen to be in the same place, and they have the same location in front of them they have to swim to, and it's like, okay. So
I think that's the difference between me and you in many things, is that
I'm overthinking
for me
it.
What it is with a lot of these type of movies, I don't put a whole lot of logic into it. Like, sure, the logic is in your mind, and that whole night scene was kind of ridiculous, but I think I'm one of those people, which is probably why I like the Fast and Furious franchise so much. It's really the fact that I have this incredible thing where when I get into a movie, I just kind of buy the premise. And a lot of times I think it's how much you buy into a premise and the ridiculousness of a premise that can really lead to how much you enjoy a movie. And for this one, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I mean, the movie does do itself a little bit of, like I said, it does itself a little bit of merit, because it does try to explain between the dialogue, the logic behind it. Whether you buy it or not is obviously going to be anchored on whether you buy it or not, because of just what it is that they say and their logic behind it. You might not believe the same thing, right?
I don't know where it's, as I said, because it's obviously coming from an era where I have sort of like a ground of basic understanding of coming from coast town. Had this been like if this was a different sort of setup, say like they're lost in like the Canadian mountains or something, and they're having to like deal with a bear or an angry goose or something. I don't know what you guys have got up there. I don't really have a lot of solutions to doing that with that, because we don't have bears, and
yeah.
So I would probably
I get what you're saying, because I mean, I'm the same way when people watch movies that are very things that people don't know but I know about, say Hong Kong or China or something, or in those settings where I think it's ridiculous because it's something I've seen all the time, but whereas when you sell it in like, say, an American movie or something that's meant for the foreign market or something, that it's a completely different experience. I have those same issues, so I can understand where you're coming from. But obviously, I live on a river. I live in between, next to the St. Lawrence River in Canada, so I don't have experience with oceans, and I don't plan on venturing out into the sea anytime soon. So obviously I don't have those same experiences. Sure, I get what you're saying. I mean, when you're faced with both concepts, to me, I can buy it, because it really depends on how much you trust the dude that you're going with about the distance of where you need to go. But obviously, you could, like I said, both options that they had, staying on the boat or going in the water, was two unexpected ideas. Do you want to float out to sea, or do you want to try to survive and hopefully have someone save you? I mean, both options is a maybe, right? Like a big maybe. But I mean, this is what happens when accidents happen out in the ocean and the wilderness and stuff, right? Unexpected things, and that's why these movies exist. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really see the point of... There's sometimes when we do Shark Week, I really don't see the point of ripping the movie apart because most of these movies don't make a whole lot of sense anyways.
I think...
But no, I mean, I get where you're coming from because, I mean, like I said, I've watched this a few times and I think it's because over the past few years, I have watched a lot more shark movies, a lot more creature features, survival, horror, that my experience this time was definitely a lot less. I actually ranked it lower than my previous ranking when I had to rate it again this time for this viewing. It's sad, you know, because, you know, like we've been talking about, our Shark Weeks are getting lesser and lesser movies, and it really feels like we're in this kind of slim picking situation, and the movies we're starting to encounter seem to be getting lower in quality, and we need to think about where we're going to go next if we don't do sharks and not have to go into, you know, the whole, I don't know, quintology of Sharknado or something.
I think,
you know?
when it comes to shark movies, I think there's still, you know, there's still depths to be plumbed with this genre, and I think there's still surprises to be had. I mean, you only have to look at our previous selection of...
47 meters down.
Yeah, 47 meters down Uncaged, which I think was a direct-to-DVD sort of movie, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by that one. So I think there's still surprises to be had. I mean, we still have to come back into, like, the original sort of Jaws cash-in movies of, like, the 70s and look at things such as, like, Bruno Mattei's Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws, or even, like, Mako Jaws of Death, The Last Shark, like the Italian shark movies, and even more recent entries like Shark Night 3D. So there's definitely movies to have. I think where this one falls short, though, is the fact that when you're not having fun with the movie, that you start picking holes in things a lot more. When you're having fun with the film, then you don't care about how logical things are. Let's take, for example, when we look at Bates, for example.
Yeah.
That movie was constantly interesting, it was constantly fun, and it's the most stupid premise going. It's like, you know, it's a tsunami and now we have sharks in a supermarket, which is a more stupid premise than this. But at the same time, it's a lot of fun. There's like constantly things being thrown at me and curveballs here and there. And, you know, we got to see Maisie from Nip Tuck, Julian McLaren, I think his name is. So, yeah, there was definitely things to hold the interest, and I think that's where the Reef falls down short. Is like, first off, it's like these characters are just really unlikable from the start, so no matter how much scantily clad flesh you throw in at the screen, you're still not really gaining much of my interest. And then we put them into a really stupid situation, and one which there's nothing really to do. I mean, we're out in the open water. I mean, we're not flashing off to like a search party or having any sort of like cutaway to sort of hold our interest. We're just watching these same 4 people bob around in the ocean, and occasionally one of them's going to get bumped off. And I think these are things that are only going to work to your detriment. It's like anytime the audience is given time to think, then you're going to be in trouble in this, especially in this sort of genre, where you don't want the audience to be thinking. You want to be keeping the audience busy with what's happening on screen and not thinking about, like, well, if I was in this situation, or does this make sense in this situation? And I think this is, as I said, is where I sort of pinpointed the main issue with the Reef as being. It's sort of like you're putting me in an environment that's not particularly interesting to look at with very uninteresting people whose plight I don't especially care about. So that's where my main sort of issues with the film sort of lay.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see where you're coming from. I mean, for the Reef, I think in a nutshell for me in this viewing, at least after this viewing, is really that it has a decent premise. Like, the concept of attacking a shark movie from a different angle is a good, you know, it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
To change it into this kind of survival sort of deal. But at the same time, I think it also tries to be this kind of slow burn thriller. And it's a bit hard to, I think, because of just how the characters are fairly unengaging from the beginning. And the beginning section, I realized in this viewing, was actually took up a good portion of the beginning. Where you actually get action is kind of near kind of the almost halfway point when they get into the water and where, you know, dangers start happening. And that's a really slow start for any sort of creature feature, I think. So there were some, obvious pacing issues on this one. But I think where you make a really good point, I think, is the comparison of Bait and this one is that I think that when they did Bait, it was kind of a serious movie, but then there was a lot of kind of this silliness and humor to it.
And we got that.
On top of that, you had multiple areas, and then there was a lot of people. There was like a lot of bodies that can die to sacrifice, right? In this whole ordeal, and there were multiple sharks in the area. Whereas this one is one big ocean, 4 people, and then it was overkill if they had too many sharks, so you only had one shark, which was kind of tailing them, which you can assume is tailing them the entire way, and kind of, for some weird reason, didn't attack them at night. And you start, I think, when you watch sometimes some shark movies, like, at least for me, it's Deep Blue Sea, and, for you, it might be Jaws 2 or something like that. These movies we can rewatch, and there's things that we like about it because it's not just, a tense shark movie. There's some kind of humor to it. There's some kind of other things to it. Where The Reef, I think, falls short is that any sort of thriller, for me at least, unless it's something maybe like David Fincher or something super exceptional, it's hard to get you to watch it a second time and have that same feeling. And I think that when I watched The Reef the second time, I had that feeling where it was not quite as good as the first time, but it was still a tense experience. But, there's something that, shark movies is such a competitive market in kind of like the creature feature sort of thing. It seems like every year we at least have one shark movie, or you're not looking at kind of the Asylum fanfare and stuff like that, right? I think that's the thing is The Reef doesn't hold up on a second viewing or repeated viewings, because once you start, like you said, having time to think about the plot, think about the setting, think about the things that they're doing, it doesn't really hold up as well. And then the more time you spend with these characters, the more you feel that they're just very irritating to watch and annoying to get into. And I don't know, I'm fairly, I think, I'm disappointed. I don't know if I'm just in a bad mood when I'm watching this or whatever, but I was so disappointed on this viewing for The Reef.
Now I feel bad for you.
No, I feel bad because I chose this movie because we were running out of movies, and then I pulled you in this, which you seem to absolutely loathe watching. So it's...
I'd say, yeah, I mean, it's not, but it certainly wasn't our most standout experience. And I think, again, I watched some very questionable cinema to begin with, but I think when the viewing becomes, when there's nothing to really sort of be gained from the viewing experience, that's what tends to bring up my more critical sort of side of things. Is if you're not giving me something to take away from it, something to latch onto in this film, which I think the only sort of real redeeming thing of this film is the fact that they used actual nature footage of the film. Although there is a scene where the quality of the film stock footage being used is a different film stock than the actual film stock they're shooting it on. So I think it was like some library footage they have, and there's this great white shark that's coming towards the boat, and it like suddenly switches to a different film stock, and it's so noticeably jarring that it would sort of thing that you expect in like Indian TV dramas where they have like stock wildlife footage for like hunting parties and stuff, and even they're pretty shameful, but this was bad. And then there's other scenes where it seemed they blend it really quite nicely, and obviously they shot the wildlife footage separate to the actor footage, but there's several shots within this where I thought, wow, they actually, put the actors out with some sharks and got some interesting sort of shots there. So it's kind of nice to see them not going like CGI route or even like a practical effect route, and just going out and shooting actual sharks, which is always fun to see, even if it's the idea of sharks being demonized, which is never particularly fun. But you know, it is what it is. But yeah, this one didn't particularly work for myself. So sorry, folks.
We're gonna work on a next one, which is gonna be better. Hopefully.
Well, we'll have another one. I'm not gonna guarantee this can be better than this one. I mean, we've got a couple of ideas sort of kicking around as to say what we're gonna go for our next Shark Week. So we'll just stay tuned for that one. There's a couple of films if you did obviously like this that you can check out. Obviously, there's Open Water, which is, as we said already, was released in 2003. Got a lot of attention when it came out. A lot of people really liked it, and the critics especially liked it. It's not one that I felt particularly compelled to go back to, especially as it was sort of like tapping into that Blair Witch vibe. But unlike the Blair Witch, it's just not the most interesting of settings. And the whole time when I'm watching this film as well, I just kind of wanted to go back and watch The Shallows again.
Yeah. No, I mean, for my further viewings, it would definitely be The Shallows. I think this is the most comparable one.
Definitely.
And The Shallows, I think one of the main things is The Reef and The Shallows are so comparable in, I think, the premise that The Shallows makes just a more exciting kind of viewing because you're choosing the option, right, to be safe on a rock, and then you leave when you have no other choice and when you have to try and figure out a way to survive. Whereas this one is right off the bat, they choose to go out and survive and, try and see if they can find that rock to go on without knowing where to go. Right?
I mean, obviously with The Shallows, it had all these other interesting elements to it. I mean, you had the survival picture, you had her sort of journey as a character. I mean, she was going into it, trying to escape her own sort of problems at home, and dealing with the death of her mother by going on this sort of like pilgrimage to this surf spot that she had, and it's the idea that she'd stumbled into the sharks' hunting ground, and then it's sort of like trying to outsmart this apex predator of where we're obviously seeing her face these different sort of challenges, and she even had that delightful Steven Seagal seagull to talk to. So I think it was a very good movie. Another one you can check out, which is less about sharks, but just more people in being adrift in the water, is Open Water 2, Adrift, where a group of kids out in a boat decide they're going to jump off the side of the boat, but somebody forgot to put the ladder down, and we basically follow these kids as they try to get back on the yacht with various degrees of success. But it's funny really, because over here they just released it as Adrift, and I think everywhere else they released it as Open Water 2 Adrift, and I would never assume that those two movies are connected in any way whatsoever. So
although, I mean, if I were to add in a kind of survival sort of movie, but not in the sense, like indie, but not in the sense of in the waters. And in relation to something you were talking about, like Canadian, that would be Backcountry is a really, really great one about, just the forests and stuff like that.
I remember you recommended this. You recommended this to me before, and it's one that I'm still trying to hunt down over here, so. Because I believe it's bears, isn't it?
Yes, bears, yeah.
Which themselves are just scary as all hell. I mean, it's like when you see that footage of people being stalked by like baby bears and stuff. It's like it's the most scariest footage going. So, and it also makes me question: can bears run downhill? Or can they? I don't know.
I don't know. I really don't. I think they can, but I don't know. At one certain point, maybe they'll roll down.
Comes this fairy cannonball running towards you. I don't know if it's the same as the fact dogs can't look up. So, anyway, that was The Reef. It's available now on Netflix, depending on where you are in the world.
Not in Canada.
It's available in the UK in Netflix, so if you run out of things to watch, you can always check it out on there. Yeah, that was, as I said, that was the Reef from 2010. Thank you as always for listening. If you want to check out our full archive episodes, you can do it at moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and let us know what you think of the show. You can, if you leave us as a review, and whether you happen to be listening to us, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It all helps raise the profile of the show. Kim, for our next viewing, so we're obviously in that after hours block, and what are we going to be looking at next?
Yeah, the next after hours is gonna be your pick, which I don't know why I'm introducing, but it's gonna be your 28th. It's gonna be your pick, and it's the 2018 movie Dumpling.
Yes, Dumpling, another Netflix exclusive, starring Jennifer Aniston, and a parody of sorts of child beauty pageants. It's one I've been sort of interested in seeing. It ties nicely into our season of celebrating the work of female directors of note, so we'll be obviously looking at that on our next episode, so make sure you join us for that. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim, and we will be back next time to talk about Dumpling. Good night.